Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel and this amazing series. I'm Aditya. In this series, we will be creating an Express API, we will be having JWT authentication, and interestingly, we are gonna use MySQL database to see how we can have our APIs communicating with the database to do certain computations or operations. Also, we will introduce the JWT token concept where we will see how we can protect our route. So this overall is going to be an amazing series. And without any further ado, let's begin with the very first video. Okay, so let's start by understanding what is Express. So Express is a Node.js framework. It's very minimalistic and it is very popular. Like if you see on NPM, the download counts for Express, they are super high. Also for the GitHub surveys, it's like not at the top, but at least trending somewhere in the top 5. So it has a lot of opportunities, a lot of, I would say, potential. And you can use it to create REST APIs. You can also use it to create GraphQL APIs. You can use it to create like server-side rendered web applications. So it's a good framework. And the good thing about this is that it comes with minimalist, I would say, structure, because of which we can define our own structure for our project. So to begin with, what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to create a directory. So here I'm going to say mkdir JWT API. Perfect. Then I'm going to cd inside that directory, express JWT API. There we go. And now here we will start by initializing our project. So first, before we initialize, guys, make sure you have Node.js installed. That's the very basic steps. I'm very sorry. I straight away dived into the code without giving the basics of this. So first, you need Node.js installed. Then you need to make sure that NPM is installed correctly. So I assume that Node.js and NPM is all set up properly on your website. Sorry, not a website, on your system. If not NPM, you can use yarn. Anything works. So here we are going to say npm init. Now this will ask us some series of questions. So first, package name, we can just say enter, like just keep on pressing enter, entry point index.js, test command, git repository. If you want to fill in this information, that's totally fine. But if you don't want to, you can just skip them. I'll just put a name here. It's good to put author name. So here I'm going to put my name, license, let's say ISC standard. Yes, perfect. Now, if I open this with VS Code, so we have a simple package.json here where we just put in our configuration. Now, next thing we need to do is install certain packages. First, we will need Express. Then we will install other packages with it, one after the other. So let's begin with Express. Now, as soon as I install it, it should be here inside our dependencies. There we go. And now, if you notice, we have given index.js as our main file. So here, somewhere outside or anywhere in your project, we just need to create a index.js. Perfect. Now this index.js will be our entry point for our APIs. So whenever we deploy our code, let's say on Firebase as a function or somewhere on a serverful or like, let's say Elastic Beanstalk or somewhere like that, whenever someone hit a request for our API, the main file or the first file that's going to get called, that's going to be our index.js. Now to begin with, it's very simple to start with the Express server. So to begin with, which is again going to be a node server. So to begin with, we will import Express. Now, as we are on Node.js, sometimes you might have ES6 import format working. Sometimes you may not have it. It just, if you want to have the normal import structure, you just need to provide here your type as module. Otherwise, we can stick with the require format or the common JS format. So what we need to do is we can simply use the common JS format. So first we say const express, we import it. So we say require from express package. We just install that package. Then we need to create the instance of this express. So we will say const app, which will be again going to be our app, the overall API app. So that will be the instance of this express that we just installed. And once we have the instance, straight away we can start making like associating it with some endpoints. But to begin with, we can check if our instance is correctly associated or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say here app.listen. That means once you start listening to the request, listen with certain configurations. So here I'm going to say listen on port number 3000. it's not necessary you have to give a hard-coded value. You can take it from, let's say, environment variables, or you can take a variable here. But for simplicity, let's give it some hard-coded value for here right now. And then there will be some callback. This callback will mostly gonna be just a simple message or just some console.log saying that, okay, server running great. Awesome. Now, once we have this setup done, let's give it a try. Well, to give it a try, very simple. Let's clear the screen so that we have something very minimalistic. And now what we need to do is we need to type node, because of course this is a node.js project. It's a node.js file. So we need to use node to run this index.js. So we are going to say index.js. Now, if we get everything right, we should see in our console.log this message, server running great. So let's give it a try, hit enter. Yay, server running great. Perfect. Now let's try to add an API route to this. Now, API route, if you're new to this concept, it's just a URL endpoint when it comes to server-based APIs, because APIs are just a mechanism to communicate for two softwares with each other, or two entities with each other, or a hardware or software with each other. So it's just a mechanism for communication. Now, when it comes to something like Express, when you create API, you generally create server-based API, because if you have noticed, your browser also have browser web APIs. If you have come across these terms, or if you're using certain application, let's say for your desktop, or let's say for your Mac, you might have heard that, okay, your Mac might be making the native API calls. So your desktop might be making the native API calls. So it's nothing but a piece of code that allows communication between that desktop application with the hardware of your laptop, or certain application in your laptop. So in our case, not to divert you guys, sorry for that, we will be using the cloud-based APIs, or we will be creating the REST APIs. Now, to begin with, we will have app, which the instance that we created, and with that instance, we have various functionalities. So we will be using, first, we'll be creating a very simple GET request. So I'm going to say GET, and now what next? Well, here we will have something like /, which refers to our root route, and then there will be a second parameter, which is going to be a simple callback. And that callback will take actually 3 parameters, but compulsorily or mandatorily, it takes 2 parameters. So the first one is request and the response. So the request that comes in to this URL, and the response that we want to send back. So here, I'm just going to send a simple response. So res.send, response.send. And here I'm going to just say message. And let's give it a simple message like, hello, you are all good. Perfect. Now let's give it a try. You'll see our server is still running. So let's try to hit this URL and see what happens. So if I go in my browser, you can use Postman or any other thing to test this. But as it's a GET request, we can just simply use our browser for this. So here, as I'm running this instance on localhost, so it's going to be localhost / 3000, my port number. And here you will see cannot get /. Why? The reason being, we are running our node server, but there is no real-time refresh, or there are no things happening when we make change to our code. So how we can solve this problem? For that, we can install a package which is nodemon. So let's do that. Let's say npm I nodemon. Now nodemon is again a node package which allows, or which listens or runs our node server, and also it listens in real time, where whatever changes you make in your app, you just need to either refresh your browser to see them, or they will have, most probably you need to refresh it to see them in a real time. So let's do that. We have just installed it. Now, just to keep our life easy, we can write a command here, so that we just say, let's say npm run start, and then our nodemon will run the index.js. So here I'm going to say nodemon, because we just installed that package. Oh, sorry, it should be start. This will be our command. So our command, and what this command should do. So this command should run this nodemon. So I'm going to say nodemon. Now nodemon, what are you going to do next? Well, simply run index.js, which is going to be this one over here. So let's give it a try. Let's do npm run start, hit enter. Perfect. Server running great. Perfect. Let's give it a try. Refresh the page. And there we go. We have, hello, you're all good. Now let's make change to our code and see if this really reflects. Now here I'm going to say, oh, hello, you're all good. Hello, you are all the best people. So let's give it a try. Now if I refresh, and you'll see it reflects in our result. So whatever you make, like changes in your code, it's very easy to reflect them in real time like this. So we don't have to restart the server again and start it again kind of thing. Perfect. Now let's try to create another API now. We saw a get request. Now let's try to have a post request. So let's go over here, app.post. Now get is used to get data, obviously, and post is to post some data so that we can either save it in our database or do some computation and return back the response. So here I'm going to say, let's say we have a simple post request to create a user or add a user, which will run a function again, and we will send the response, assuming that we are writing some user code, everything worked fine, and we are going to say user created. We can make it as a JSON response like this. We are going to say message user created, something like this. Now let's see this if this works in browser. Definitely it's not going to work. The reason being it's a post request. Now you'll see if I say something like this, it will see cannot get user because we are making a get request on a post route. So for that, we can use a tool like Postman, or we can use VS Code inbuilt API tester where you can make send request responses, like receive responses for every request. So what I'm going to do is I'll use simple Postman. Perfect. Now to make Postman work, you also need to make sure that you have Postman client installed locally so that it communicates with your local server. So for that, I'm going to go and start my Postman client or Postman agent. So that's great. All right. Now let's make a request. So I'm going to say localhost colon 3000 / user. Now you'll ask, well, like, how do you know that it's on localhost? The reason being, I'm running my server locally, and whenever you run things locally, 99% of the time, or rather, if I'm correct, 100% of the time, it's always localhost or IP address like 110.7.0.0.1. Port number, we just specified over there, and then / user. And now here we need to make a post request, and when we send, there we go, we are getting a successful message, user created. Now, these are just the basics of Express. In the next video, we will see how we can add or send data, how can we access the URL parameters, and how can we have the query parameters. So see you in the next video. Till the next time, goodbye.